All right, so here's kind of another review video on a recent type video that Jack from World Socionics Society did with Kier. Hopefully, I pronounced that right. Another good session. This was a nice, clean, well done one. Nothing weird on this one. Um, but there were some interesting points, at least that I find interesting, worth kind of mentioning that are kind of specific to Kier's type. Um, which he gets typed LIE. Spoiler alert, too late. All right, he gets typed LIE on this particular thing. Um, Unlike some of the other ones, like let's say the one that was done with Goblin like slapped you in the face with I mean, within the first like 30 seconds of the guy talking, it became very straightforward and simple. But sometimes you get some individuals that are not always so simple. They give a lot of responses that could go many different directions, doesn't really mean much of anything until you get that big flag moment. In this particular one, I think this is where it starts getting interesting. Kier starts talking about his experiences in law school and how he didn't like law school. Uh, and he kind of goes through that. And I think this is rather interesting for LIEs, especially since LIEs are a type that uh, get stereotyped as being one of these like big business hard working types, and like they're just kick-ass in school and they're just great at everything because they're so hardworking and so smart and brilliant. And that's kind of a stereotype that also comes out of MBTI. And I think that misses the mark a lot. It exaggerates the so-called brilliance of ENTJs, and that they're like great at school and great at um, everything, really. That, you know, they just seem to work so hard and get things done well, and that's not really an LIE. That's probably more of an LSE, actually. But anyway, let's get into this because I thought this was where things finally became pretty clear, or started becoming clear, of what his type was. It started to really come out.
I was a philosophy major, but I sort of was within the pre-law umbrella, and I did extremely well at that. So I sort of like, okay, well, I guess so. I guess this is probably what I should be doing rather than finance or something else. Academics was the other thing I considered.
By the way,
Going
interesting
anyway.
those choices, right? How many times do you see one of these interviews where um, it's some intuitive NT type kind of going through school and doesn't have a kind of a clear direction of what they want to be, but they end up going into something um, something kind of nerdy and just very abstract in its nature and very flexible, allowing for room to move in different directions. So I don't know how many times I've heard some NT, or just not NT, but N type, uh, doing philosophy as a major, even though they know that they might not make a like a career out of it, but that's just kind of what they decide to do for undergrad, right? So anyway,
And becoming a professor. But I went into the law, and I hated law school. I really hated law school. That's a big part of my mythology, is that I really did not enjoy law school. My wife and I, she went
strong
to a different school
reaction.
than I did, but we met at a young lawyers happy hour, and one of the things we bonded over was that she really couldn't stand law school either.
Mm-hmm.
But I do enjoy being an attorney. I do enjoy the practice. But yeah, I thought I'd be good at it, and I was willing to put up with a lot of difficulty getting through law school and getting sort of situated in the right place in the profession. But it's paid off for me.
So I guess a question I'd like to ask then is why?
Before he asks that, and I think this is very telling for LIEs. I think you're going to find many of them probably don't like school, at most levels, even at collegiate levels, and they'll have specific reasons, but a lot of them won't like it, and will often have very specific reasons that they're going to go into at length as to why they thought it sucked and where it could have gone better and everything else. It's not just, oh, I don't like it, I just don't like school, the end. No, they'll have a lot of good reasons as to why.
do you hate law school?
I noticed
so
the
much,
hate,
and
you
why is
really
that
strong
practice seem to do
opinions.
so much better?
Okay, so it's a good question. Law school has a different setup than any other type of school that I'd ever been in, where you're going to be graded once a semester on a single examination. There's no midterms. Almost
Yeah,
no
it's awful.
classes have any assigned work that's graded during the semester.
Yeah, you could already tell what a
And
disaster that's going to
the
be.
classes do not necessarily cover the materials that will be tested on the exam. So
Oh, that
there's
drove
a
me
bit
crazy
of an
right there too.
embedded mystery in what are you supposed to be studying, what is going to be on the test, what do you actually need to know. And this is going to be
that
more
mystery
true as
drives
you
me
go to the
nuts too.
better schools. Like the more elite schools will have to use more tricks and deceptions and subterfuge to sort the wheat from the chaff. So the school that I went to pretty much took for granted that everybody was going to be able to pass the professional exams, but they still had the job of trying to determine who deserves an A and who deserves a C and who deserves a B. And they would not be very straightforward in the way that they would teach people. And I was sort of turned off by that. I just thought this is,
I would too.
because I went to this small liberal arts school called Middlebury in Vermont, and I did 6 months at St. Andrews, and I really loved undergraduate. And the professors in undergraduate always wanted to teach you, if you were willing to put in the work and learn, like they were going to teach you as much as you had an appetite for. But in law school, it was this sort of cagey hiding the ball exercise. Hiding the ball is the phrase that's the popular phrase.
And I would love to mention there that I think this is a very common experience, particularly at graduate school levels. Sometimes in undergrad as well, depending on the class and depending on the major, whatever, where you will see this sort of like lack of direction, lack of structure, lack of guidance, this sort of assumption that, well, you're gonna pass, you're gonna figure it out. Come on, guys, you're smart enough, you can just do the reading, whatever, and you'll figure it out on your own, kind of a thing. That lack of structure is really just going to drive, I think, a lot of LIEs crazy. One, because we kind of need a little bit of structure. I think so. I don't think we create structure that well for ourselves. That's something more you might see of an LSE, that they'll just work hard and grind and create their own kind of way of deciding what's good work, quality work, what they should be doing and reading and all that. And LIEs are kind of like, I'm trying to pick what's efficient, what's effective, what I need to do to maximize my time. I don't want to just read everything randomly, so I need to figure out what's actually useful here. So this kind of stuff he's talking about, of just not having any real grades, just a final exam at the end, it's so lacking in its structure, in clarity of what you're trying to achieve, that it really sucks, and it makes you start to question, why the hell am I even here? If you're not going to teach or do anything, I might as well just go home and read whatever the hell I feel like reading, because why bother being in class then? That's something I could relate to heavily. And as I said, I feel like that's something you find a lot more in grad school. Ironically, I think the higher up in grade level you go, the shittier teaching becomes. And I have a lot of reasons for that, but whatever, that's for another time. So anyway, back to it.
For what the professors do in law school, they hide the ball. They don't make it clear to you what's going to be on the test and what you're going to need to know. And I also had a sort of a personal drama that unfolded right before my.
Let me stop there. Also, again, I think for, I don't know if this really is for all the other rational types, the other NTs. I don't know about that, but I would say that for LIEs, I'm going to go ahead and just stick my neck out on that one and kind of say that they do not understand the idea of hiding information, of hiding stuff, as he's saying, hiding the ball. Like, why? Let's make the information clear as possible. Figure out what needs to be done with that information, what we need to know, and then let's just get to it. Let's study what we need to study, or let's work on what we need to work on. What's the deal with hiding the information? Like, and again, he has very strong opinions on this kind of stuff, and I would not be surprised if he was very vocal about his negative feelings towards the whole schooling while he was going through it. He wasn't just passively sitting there just saying, well, it is what it is, and just kind of grinds on. I bet he was probably very kind of pissy about the whole thing while he was there.
My first year, so that sort of permanently turned me off, because I was not mentally fit when I went into my exam my first semester. And,
permanently turned off.
You know, I got some fairly disappointing grades, and at that point, I mean, which are highly determinative to where you place for jobs your first summer. So it was just sort of, I had a major negative reaction to it.
And I bet he was wondering, why didn't people think of that already and fix the system to begin with? Why did they
keep
it like
this?
Part of it is
bad luck. Part of it's the way they approach the teaching.
Yep.
So you can understand how to actually get the A, as it were. And if you understood it, you could have worked at it, but they weren't clear about it, so you wouldn't know how to get an A.
Yeah, it would be where if you had done a bunch of networking, if I had done a bunch of networking and talked to a bunch of upperclassmen and they were willing to sort of share their secrets with me, then I would have learned, perhaps.
So a lack of
from the professors, maybe I should have gone to a bunch of
lack of the SF stuff, a lot of the socializing, networking.
Showing up and doing the assigned reading wasn't going to yield the expected results. So. And they graded on a curve. It's the first time I'd ever been graded on a curve. I didn't really like that.
We graded on a curve.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I mean the college I went to had sort of grade deflation, where it's sort of like I took classes from the most difficult professors, where everybody would get a B or a C unless you really
another annoying habit. And I also noticed, if you can see the live chat, there weren't that many people on this particular one.
Doesn't matter. You can have all the
but still, for those that were on, you notice that it's totally blank. Like nobody's really said anything yet, because nobody really
I didn't enjoy that.
Has figured him out particularly yet.
Brilliant. Someone will still get a C, even if they would get an A.
Very different from someone like Goblin or some other individuals that you kind of peg them really fast.
There has to be somebody who does not get a good grade. It's sort of a bell curve. There has to be this number of A pluses, this number of A's. I mean, the professors may have some degree of wiggle room, but it has that sort of imposed structure on it that's, I think, fairly disagreeable in principle.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we talked about, you becoming an attorney was quite a lot driven by, first of all, it's in your family, but also you really like the cut and thrust of debate.
I did.
So what about debates that comes to you naturally? What is about that which you find, I'm really confident at doing this?
The old classic NTs are good at debating kind of thing.
Gosh,
stereotype, but
that I enjoyed so
works.
Much? Well, there's layers to this. The first thing that I enjoyed was that there's just sort of a thrill in that you have to stand up for 8 minutes, and then you have to stand up for 5 minutes, and then in every single debate round with a minimum amount of preparation. So you're sort of forced to stand up, and you're forced to make an argument, whether you have no idea what the other person's talking about, whether you've done any preparation at all. And there's just sort of like an adrenaline of sort of competing, but it's sort of mentally competing. Part of it is my background, where, I was very physically strong. Like I could bench press, 90 kilos when I was 14, but I was not very fast. And I wasn't particularly sort of agile. So I was never particularly good at the sports that the school that I went to had, which were soccer and basketball, or football and basketball, I should say.
Yeah.
Depending on where you're located.
So you're already getting a sense of him demonstrating a valuing of SE. Competition, arguing, the debate. He's bringing up sports stuff. And competing. He's mentioning it. He's viewing it like competition. He's enjoying, as Jack said, the cut and thrust of it, being in the moment, the adrenaline rush. A lot of this all very SE stuff that he's going on about here.
You have no idea what they're talking about.
So it's starting, you're getting that flavor of an NT.
And then I enjoyed sort of like the strategizing, sort of like when you get sort of.
Oh, now he's mentioning strategizing. So you're getting that, a lot of NT flavoring. You're getting a valuing of SE going on. So you might already be thinking, okay, he's probably an NT of some sort. He's very verbal, very talkative. He's kind of to the point.
Researching
indicative of a TE. strong
other people
TEUs.
could be arguing for
And now he's showing you
meta game or meta debate.
good usage and good liking of SE.
What can you do?
This is something that makes LIEs a little bit like some of your more SE dominant types, like SLEs and types like that, because LIEs can use SE pretty well at times.
Other things like critiques of various kinds, but I was sort of one of those people that wasn't necessarily like the most immediately gifted at it. I think that there are certain people that are better at sort of like the negative aspect of debate, where they're sort of skilled at sort of picking apart arguments and sort of just finding internal logical inconsistencies, where they can just they sort of are more preloaded with an ability to debate virtually anything. But I found that sort of as I progressed, I was more interested in sort of researching and finding, what my approach was going to be, or what are my favorite arguments, and sort of going at it that way. So
strategic thought.
And plus, success is it sort of reinforces itself. You get some success that you don't expect. It gives you a boost of confidence, and you're ready to go do it again. So I was pretty into it.
So some research, know your facts, enjoying the moment of SE.
Yeah. What are the worst part for you personally about
Suffered from the lack of SF, he mentioned.
The worst part about being an attorney? Oh, man.
Yeah, for you.
Okay. For me personally, I would say that the most difficult part of being an attorney is maintaining positive relations with clients that are being very difficult. The kind of work that I do, my cases are all sort of within
Jack's
the
nodding.
umbrella of
Very common
where,
for the
negligence means failing to use ordinary care.
Very
ordinary
common
care
for
means
the LIEs. Struggling on the social front, and especially struggling when there's people that they just feel like I can't seem to communicate because you just don't get it. You don't seem to understand how this works. Common stuff. So we're seeing that he likes fighting the competitive SE stuff. He likes strategizing. Notice how very verbal he is. He's quick to respond. Plenty of examples. And he keeps pointing to failings of just not socializing with people to get information or to do well or bond with people and stuff like that. A lot of failures on the more feely side of things.
Temperamentally going to be more difficult. So trying to keep very unhappy people happy enough with me is, I would say, pretty hard at times.
That's what he
so like the customer service aspect of it can be a big challenge for me.
Yeah.
Customer service stuff.
Making a lot of sense. Thank you.
Let me be the brains that gets the problem done, but not deal with the customer service. Social.
And and just to elaborate on that, like most of the time, I deal with people who are fairly like legally unsophisticated. If you're lower class or like lower middle class, like working class, you're a lot more likely to be involved in an accident. You either have a manual labor job where there's inherent physical risk involved in the job that you do. Some of them are very high paying, but if you're a welder, like if you're a master welder, or if you work on an offshore rig or something like that, like you could be getting paid a lot of money. I mean, it's an easily middle class job, but like it's working class, there's a lot of physical risk. And also people that tend to be like lower middle class, they commute a lot. Like they're much more likely to be on the road for long periods of time.
He knows his job well, knows his facts well, knows statistics.
An accident. So
which a lot of it's not hard to figure out anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's just some difficulties associated with that, and I'm trying to remember what was the reason why I brought that up. I'm trying to think. Why?
Well, you're putting into context, why you have a lot of difficult people to deal with.
Oh yeah. They're not. Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but they're not like a lot of legally sophisticated people. They may not know an attorney in their like circle of friends. So they won't necessarily understand any of the technical details of what I'm doing. And it can be quite difficult to explain it to them. So if they sort of want to know, well, what's going on in my case, it could be quite an exercise of me trying to sort of dumb it down enough to where I'm giving them the information that they need. But, they don't feel like I'm being condescending, or they're able to comprehend it and make a sensible decision based off of that. So that's another challenge, is that it can be difficult.
Which he's actually probably I'd be willing to bet he's probably a lot better than he thinks he is at condensing that information and making it simple and to the point so that his clients can actually understand what's going on. In his mind, he probably thinks that it's a bit of a challenge for him, but I bet he's a lot better at it than he thinks.
Go about it the wrong way, or if they're just not in the mood for it.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Okay. Let's see what else I can ask you about. So, what do you like? What other things you like to do when you're at home?
Well,
we're getting to the giveaways.
I've been married for 7 years. I have a daughter who's 2 years and 4 months old. So I spend quite a bit of time with them when I'm at home, doing whatever needs to be done around the house, playing with my daughter. It's a blast. Sort of since the pandemic started 3 years ago, we've spent most of our time at the house. I'm actually just getting over COVID, which I got for the first time. I don't know if you can still hear it in my voice, but yeah, no, I got it. I think I tested positive 5 days ago, and it's pretty much gone by now. But we've spent we've managed to avoid it for a long time because we've been pretty locked down. My wife's been pretty.
So he, and again, if you notice the live chats, nobody's really said anything. I remember I was like outside, like walking my dog at this time. So it shows that he's not quite as obvious as certain other people were. Somewhere along the way here, he starts getting into asking questions about his ability to relax or hobbies or something like that. And he talks about how he has a hard time with that. He has a hard time turning his mind off, where he's, oh, look. So somewhere in there, I finally threw my vote in there, LIE. And I think at this point I was just kind of like waiting. I was relating to him quite a bit, and I was just kind of waiting to see some confirmation there. And when he starts talking about not really being able to sit by the beach and just kind of like just relax and so on, he feels like his mind is always working on something. His mind is always going. And Jack asked multiple questions on that to kind of get confirmation there. That shows you the SI vulnerable. I think that the LIEs can be misunderstood sometimes with the SI. That the LIEs usually probably, they don't realize in a lot of ways that they're not doing the SI stuff. They think they are. They think they are, but in reality, they're not. They're taking that time when they should be relaxing, and they end up reading or watching something or talking to other people, getting excited, doing other things. Maybe they're working out, probably even an intense workout. They're doing stuff like that, and they, in their mind, they think that they're like doing SI and relaxing and just not doing anything. But in reality, they're not. They just don't see it. So anyway, that's an issue. And as the interview goes on as well, he starts talking about his wife, and he starts describing her and how she is good at a lot of the SI things and maintaining stuff. And then the conversation turns into kind of describing his wife a little bit. And so we start discussing whether his wife is possibly an ESI or an SEI. At first, he describes her a little bit like an SEI. So I remember throwing that in the chat. But as he keeps going, he kind of refers to some of her SE strength and starts to make her seem a little bit more like an ESI. And chances are, if he is an LIE, his dual would be an ESI, and it's just more likely that he'd be interested in ESI than an SEI. So we have that. And as it keeps going, we get into him discussing other data, other facts about socionics and things, because he is very familiar with it. And he kind of walked into this more or less with a good idea of what he was, which can be a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. If a person is can be a little biased because they think of themselves a certain way, and so they start answering a certain way, that could be a potential problem. But it wasn't a problem here. So anyway, I think that pretty much wraps up most of what went down on this one. Again, another good interview, nice and clean. Good job by Jack. Great interview by Kier as well. He was very open and discussed a lot of things. So just another good one. As always, let me know if you saw what I saw, if you were confused, or maybe you pegged him as LIE like immediately, or if you still disagree. I don't, whatever. So see where that goes. Again, for the actual full interview, if you want to watch that, here it is. World Socionics interview with Kier. I'm of course going to link it, and World Socionics Society. All right. So until the next one.